Peace to the planet. You know what it is. A decent the bishop. I'm chilling. Back with David. Apologize about last week. I'm a nerd. I have allergies. They really kick in. I start sounding like Snuffleupagus. You don't want to hear it. I'm sure you can hear it a little bit now, but it gets way worse than this. So I had to cancel. I hate when that happens. But David is back. Money Mondays is still on. But we're going to get deeper. We're going to get a little bit deeper than the dough, right? We're going to start talking about a little bit more mindset stuff. We're always going to be keeping it, back to the cash flow. But today we're talking about what hostage negotiators and marriage counselors know that you don't. This is stuff that you need to know. David, welcome back, and thank you for being with us for Money Mondays.
So if you're Snuffleupagus, I guess I'm Oscar the Grouch.
Pretty much, you are definitely Oscar. No, I don't know. You're happier than Oscar.
If you call me Elmo, this podcast is
Elmo's
over.
Not.
We're done.
I promise not to. You know what I mean? But no, man, I'm really glad to be back. The thing is, man, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow to try to get all this nasal stuff figured. It's ridiculous, but I'm glad to be doing this with you, because now we're starting to get into like the life skills part of things. And, what do you think is like the single, like most important life skill you've learned across everything that you've done, the VC world, law, whatever? Like, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I have an answer for that. Let me frame where I want to go over the next few weeks with you. So when I first talked about what wealth was, I said it was more than financial wealth. And I talked about financial, which we've spent the last, 8+ weeks on.
Right.
It's personal wealth and it's creative wealth, which can both be creativity and entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to take everyone on this whole journey. This is the transition into the personal wealth part. And I could literally spend like an entire year on this and I would lose all your listeners. So that's not good for either of us. So I tried to condense it to 4 sessions. And the first one is the secret life skills. It's when I teach it, the kind of lead in is, what do the world's leading marriage counselors and the best hostage negotiators know that you don't about life? And it's the single greatest skill that will determine your success more than most of the financial stuff. I mean, this is the great skill.
Really?
And the answer is attuned active listening.
Okay.
And I'm going to convince you in the next 45 minutes, this is a real thing. I'm not just saying this. This is literally one of the greatest skills that has had the largest determining effect on the success of my life.
Wow.
Of everything.
Okay.
And I'm going to justify that because, bold claims require, bold proof. And so we're going to go through that. But, I just want to clarify a few things. So attuned to active listening doesn't just mean I heard what you said and can repeat it back because we're all smart enough to do that. It means they feel heard, that you have made them diffused. You've dismantled their fear circuitry. I'll go through that a little bit because you have to understand the mechanisms of this. But this applies, and I'm going to give you examples. This applies to billion-dollar negotiations, to building lifelong relationships, which is the greatest thing you can do.
That's important to me.
And as mostly there's both men and women watching this, but your choice of life partner is the greatest thing that will screw your life up or make it amazing, other than just.
I'm a testament to this thing.
Other than where you're born, and it's maybe the greatest determinant is that, and it's incredible once you start to see the patterns. You can never unsee it. You can never unsee it. And one of our early sessions, I kind of alluded to this, and I showed you a picture, and I'll put it up here again of, the world's leading marriage counselors who are the Gottmans, Dr. John and Dr. Julie, and I'll go through them in a little bit. And then I show this very mean looking hostage negotiator, Chris Voss. He's actually one of the nicest guys. He's always smiling. It was very hard, honestly, to find a picture of him looking mean. He lives in Vegas like I do. And
that's dope.
One of the greatest. This guy has done so much. And I'll tell you some stories about Chris and his book and some trouble it's gotten me into, because don't let me get off this episode without that. But, the way I kind of got to this wasn't like some academic thing. It was actually accidental. So let me give you 2 things and how they connected. So I started in college as a rape crisis counselor. Like, it's something I did on the side. I was trained in the 40-hour crisis certification. There's actually a national curriculum now. And unless Trump has taken it down from the Department of Justice website.
Possible.
You're really dealing with people who are in their worst moments and have had their entire world shattered. or you're dealing with people who are helping people like that, because a lot of it's partners and spouses of survivors calling. And the first thing you have to learn is how to make someone feel heard and centered and come back to themselves and understand that everything is not lost and there is still hope, and you can restore them to a world that has happiness and joy and laughter in it, right? And I also went through my first marriage, which, we both alluded to, mental illness is a real thing. Let's not be, I don't want to get her lawyer, after me for defamation claims.
Yeah, don't do it, Blair. Don't do it.
Truth is a defense. And, I learned about listening there. And then I also, as a lawyer, and I think I've mentioned this, but I was a top lawyer at one of some of the world's largest law firms, running like large practice groups globally. I used a lot of the tools here in very big deals, and some interesting things happened. And I'll tell you some of the stories about it, but it was like my secret weapon. Mm-hmm. In each of these cases, what I started to learn is if I listen to people, if I can mirror them, if I can do accusation audits, and I'll tell you what that is shortly, if I can make them feel like I'm on their side, whether it's business, whether it's relationship, whether it's dealing with people in their worst moments in life, you can completely transform their trajectory. And it's the greatest skill.
No, that's beautiful, man. Well, I'm here for it. I'm actually half decent, half not. I also don't think that I'm always present to my lack of presence. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not just that you're not present. You're not even present for how not present you are. I drift into that.
I'm sorry, you were saying something? I'm just kidding.
I almost did that when you first mentioned active.
I beat you to it. We're like 2 third graders who are in the class.
Exactly.
This is the problem.
No, that was great. Well played, sir.
Okay.
You're saying that marriage counselors and hostage negotiators are doing the same thing, but those are 2 different worlds, my friend, or should be.
Let me break it down for you here. So let's start with the biology of it. So I'm going to tell you something shocking. We are mammals. If you didn't know that, surprise.
I was rocking.
If you didn't pay attention to biology, and we really survived evolutionarily by being hardwired to connect. Oxytocin, serotonin. It's a tribal system. We look for our tribe. We look for our people. We want to connect. And I've said this before. You go down to the pet store. The mammals are all cuddled up like the kittens and the puppies. The reptiles are off, whatever. They don't care.
Yeah.
And for 200,000 years, that's how we survived. You could look to your left and look to your right and know that the person would protect you. And, I'll just say this as an aside. I'll get to leadership a bit later, but, and I've said this already, we go to our workplace and it's not our tribe. Our boss is the threat, is the predator.
That's true.
And so, what we know is that social isolation has the same health impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Repeat that again. Social isolation is the same health impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And we talk about loneliness epidemics among men, and this is a real thing. It applies to women too. But so we are wired to correct. And when we listen to respond, to argue, to make a point, to look clever, but we don't listen to understand. We don't listen to make someone feel heard. And so, we have these leadership myths like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, that people who are jerks and like roll people into the ground. And, we see leadership that way because it makes really good Hollywood stories. It makes good scripts and good novels. But, in my world as a venture capitalist, for every one person like that who succeeds, there's 100 companies destroyed by people like that. And you don't see that. So good leadership, like good relationships, is boring. That's why no one talks about it. Like, we want the toxic stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, what we know is if you build a high trust culture, you can outperform low trust by 286%. That's nearly 300% in shareholder return. I mean, it's crazy what actual listening does. If you can make people feel heard, it at a biological level allows our fear circuitry to disengage. We can relax. We can communicate. We can open up.
Yeah, that's deep, man. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. I think that it's actually hella deep. I'm just gonna get quiet because I'm gonna go into weird places. Keep talking.
No, it's okay. So the different actually kinds of communication here, and I'll focus on a few. Like there's connection, friendships, relationships, coworkers, schools. We're trying to connect with someone. There's conflict, and that's delivering hard messages all the way to arguments.
Right.
There's conflict and negotiations where we are fighting over something we both want. And, ideally it's not zero sum. It sometimes is. And even then you can diffuse that. And then there are crisis communications, like someone has experienced a threat of violence or trauma, or that's imminent. And, despite the different kinds of communication, like I really say they all boil down to the same tools, really.
So what are those tools?
Yeah, so let's talk about marriage counselors for a second. So I brought my little show and tell here. So the Gottmans have a bunch of books. This is my favorite.
What's that one? Okay.
Called What Makes Love Last. And the reason for it is it really, it's a little more academic, which, it reads well, but it gives more of the science in the background.
Okay.
And it's a comprehensive roadmap. And it has a great chapter on infidelity, which is one of the greatest things that destroys relationships. So that's actually quite useful for a lot of people.
Donna knows it.
Yeah. TMI on both of us, but yeah, been there. They always blame the man. It's like, those women judges look at you like you're the jerk.
I know.
I'm like, dude, it was not me. I'm not the one that slept with half the internet. But in any event, guilty by association are we men.
Right.
Regardless, that's the book I recommend. So you may have seen these studies online that marriage counselors can predict your divorce rate from just watching 30 seconds of your video, even with the sound off. That's the Gottmans.
Yeah.
And, it's really the only relationship method with clinical efficacy proven by scientific research. And there are others that have positive results, but they're usually derivatives of the Gottmans.
Right.
Gottmans
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they are the giants of the field, or the OGs of this field.
Totally.
They looked at a number of things. So every communication, first of all, is an attempt to engage with somebody. Am I feeling heard? Are we part of this together? Are we in conflict, right? Many communications also have a bid or a request for something, like look at the sunset. I had a hard day. And the person who hears has multiple responses. They can turn toward that and engage. Like, what a beautiful sunset. Tell me about your hard day. They can ignore it. Or they can turn against, well, screw your hard day.
Guess what happened to me?
It's entirely your fault. Or, and so, and they have the four horsemen, if you may have heard that term: contempt, criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling.
Yeah.
So contempt is the number one predictor of divorce. By far. And they can tell just by looking at facial, they can code your face and how you're talking to people, even without hearing the words. But they can predict with 86% accuracy which couples are going to be divorced a few years later. Couples that turn toward each other, that reaffirm, that repair when they do damage. By the way, the four horsemen is in contempt, criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling. I don't know if I said all four of them a minute ago, but contempt is the number one.
Yeah.
And when people violate one of these, so just to go through them, criticism is you're telling someone why they were defective. Defensiveness, I didn't do that. It's not my fault. You're not really engaged with it. And stonewalling, you're just not giving the information the other person needs. And many conversational styles are avoidant, and so that feels like stonewalling. I've been in relationships before where I'm actively aggressive, as your viewers may have noticed. So I'm like, hey, I'm owed an explanation for this conduct or behavior, and the other person is shutting down. And so I feel that as stonewalling, she feels me as aggression, right? So we sometimes get in dynamics where we don't mean things to happen, but it gets bad. But regardless of how you breach, you need to repair. And the Gottmans also noticed that couples that repair, which could be a mid-conversation correction, an apology, a joke, a touch, an acknowledgement, also were great predictors of relationship success. Because people that would stop and say, hey, I'm sorry about that. I know I'm better than that. Or, we can do something different here. And, one of my favorite phrases, by the way, is it's us against the problem.
Yeah.
Even when it's my fault or her fault, it's still us against the problem, because regardless of who created it, now you're in it. And so is it me against you, or are we together? And
I want to say, Go ahead.
I use that line on my CEOs a lot, and they use it too. There's actually one of my investment portfolio company CEOs who told me last week, dude, I'm using that line all the time. And it works. Hey, it's us against the problem, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's a really deep thing. I just want to say, when the divorce was happening and it was really real, you got to talk to X once in a while or whatever. And we were having somewhat of a calmer day on this particular phone call. And I said, what really messed me up, man, is I said, we were smarter when we were younger. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, when we were young, anytime we got into an argument, we fought for the love more than we fought to win. And I said, and at some point, I think one of us won and the other one felt bad about losing. And then that's kind of how we got here. You know what I mean? Like, if you fight, you've got to fight for the love, not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tat thing, man. It's bad.
So, if you actually if you ever do need counseling for a relationship, not just marriage,
Bro.
go to a Gottman certified person. One of the first things they'll ask you is, well, the first is, do you have insurance, right? And can you pay? But, but after that, they'll say, tell me the story of how you met. And the reason for that is when you tell the story of why you are together, you can frame it typically one of two ways, which is, we were magical together. He made me laugh.
Yeah.
We did silly things. We conquered the world together. Or, from the moment he deceived me with who he was by lying about his true nature. When you start to reframe things negatively, it's indicative that you no longer are invested in the shared vision.
Yeah.
So us against the team doesn't work if there is no team. And when people start keeping score as if a debit in the other column is a credit in yours, you don't have a relationship anymore. You have a competition, and it's already kind of lost at that point unless you can reclaim that. And,
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So one of my old therapists, and we used to debate this idea. He said that in his personal perspective, all relationships are transactional, and that it's not fair when we're not honest with ourselves about that thing. He said all of it is transactional. And he went to an extreme, right? Like he talked about like a hooker on some level, whatever. Then he talked about like, certain aspects of just being out in the dating world and da-da-da-da. And he's like, but basically you're kind of trying to pay for the same thing, just a different way and in a way that which society says is okay. But he's like, ultimately it's still a transaction. And I remember like not believing that. And then asking myself after the session, like, was I being super naive or had he gone so hard down the ones and zeros path that a relationship couldn't be more than that? I thought that was an interesting perspective to hear from a counselor.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm there the way you phrased it. I think that we all have boundaries that need to be respected. And by the way, as I know a lot of your viewers are men, we're often accused of being narcissists because we you're controlling me because there's a difference here. Like if I'm telling you, you can't be these things because I want to control your behavior or your personality or how you dress or your finances, that's problematic. If it's, look, to be in a relationship with you, one of my boundaries or one of my rules is you must not make yourself sexually available to other people and have them perceive that you're available because you're in a committed relationship. And if you wish to have sex with people outside the relationship, we need to agree on that first. That's a boundary I have. Boundaries are healthy. And you're not controlling someone. You're saying you can choose to accept or reject my term. And I'm not going to say transaction term, but
I know what you mean though.
That's not narcissism or control. That's healthy.
Yeah.
And, everyone's throwing
that's adults
around,
being adults.
Yeah. People throw around the terms all the time. Like, narcissist, and as someone who was with someone with literally NPD, narcissist personality disorder, I can tell you what it really is like, not to be funny, but like the clinical version.
Not to be funny.
It's not to be messed with. And
yeah, dude.
So, there's so many things that are conflated and thrown around in the, Instagram, Facebook memosphere about, frightening thought leaders. And, and there's also this weird inversion. And it goes both ways. I'm not trying to make this like a tirade that is just pro men because, men kind of, frankly, to some degree started this. We mistreated women for hundreds of years and, we're kind of on the other end of it. But here's the interesting thing is when men are mistreated, by being exploited, humiliated, financially leveraged in inappropriate ways, it's not girl power, girl boss, go sis. I mean, it's
like 100 though.
You're doing the same shitty things men did to you, and while that may feel like we're balancing the scales of centuries, it's not healthy. And you're missing some of life's greatest moments, which is the ability to travel this journey with someone else hand in hand and solve problems together and be connected and build shared visions and see beauty with the eyes of somebody else. Like that sunset you're seeing with your partner's eyes, if you have real empathy, right? So I mourn sometimes when I look at like what my friends are going through and I see like the text messages, like that go out to the friends and there's just so much bad behavior. So this all goes back to, let's talk about conflict.
Hold on, wait, I have one question for you.
Yeah, go.
Popped up in this last thing you were saying. One time, listen, for those that are watching, I'm talking to the dudes. Don't sleep on the Resilient Men's Group. We have very powerful conversations. One of the deep conversations we had sometime last year is this guy got on. He just jumps on in the middle of his talk and he goes, at some point I start to wonder if narcissism in women isn't a trauma response to patriarchy. Yo, I think that was kind of deep.
Well,
what do you think of that?
I'm going to give a different view here. And by the way, I'm going to punt this a little bit because I told you there's 4 weeks.
Yes.
4 is actually trauma. And that's you might say, if we're having a series about wealth, personal wealth as well as financial, why would that be an entire 45 plus minutes? And the answer is because it's the single greatest undiagnosed health problem in the world. And it infects so much of our world and so many of our relationships. And so what I would say is that many of the things that affect our relationships with other people and how we interact is either because of our unresolved trauma or the person we're with's unresolved trauma. And, when we think about trauma, I'll just leave 2 teasers, not to spoil the punchline for a few weeks, but when we think about trauma and survival, a lot of the research was done, say, on Vietnam veterans in the 1970s and 80s with veterans, department. And so that's episodic one-time violence, or like it's a war. So it was like, and so a lot of the treatments are based around men, which is fight or, flee. And it's also about one-time things or episodic things that are around a series of events. A lot of, for example, what women experience is different, which is fawn or freeze, which is I need to please to avoid being hurt, which is why I become addicted to the trauma. I return to it. I will cooperate and maybe even become hypersexual in order to, or quite the opposite, asexual, in order to appease and no longer be hurt. And a lot of forms of discrimination. And this isn't just an issue for women, but as not to be the white splainer here, but racism,
it happens.
But racism's persistent, right? It's like every single day. It's not like you can say this is the one incident of racism. It's like every single day. It's just ambient and it's there. And so it's called Tuesday. It's you don't have one incident. And so if treatments you have for trauma like rewiring of your brain are built around episodic events as opposed to persistent events like sexism or racism, they're not going to be very effective. And so I'll leave it there, but
it's real, man.
There's a lot of stuff in there. And if you get into specific behaviors, you can start to see it. But, that's a good segue, because when you're in conflict situations, I want to talk about that. Like we talked about being a team, but there's a few things I also wanted to add to that, like kindness. When the other person is not being kind in a negotiation and relationship, the first reaction is to clamp down and react hard. And sometimes from a game theory perspective, that actually is the right choice. But actually, you need to model the tone you want first, typically. And it's hard if you want to win. And language matters. Like we often say things to hurt, and you can't take some of those things back. Like they will be remembered for 20 years. Like that moment where you said the thing you shouldn't have said, it'll always be remembered.
Like always.
You'll never hear the end of it. And it goes both ways. The other thing here is, in a conflict, you can have 2 competing things coexist at the same time. Like I was on a deal negotiation last week, and I said to the other person, who was pretending to be a global intellectual property expert despite not knowing the difference between copyright and patent, where I actually am. I mean, not to be arrogant, but like, did you look my bio up? Like, and what I said, and I didn't mean it, by the way, because I wanted to say you're an idiot, and it's painful to see you, and how do you dress in the morning without embarrassing yourself? But what I said is, look, we can both have different views and both be right. And let's work with the coexistence of those views. And so in language terms, instead of saying the word but, say the word and.
I've heard that before. I don't do it like I should, but I've heard
so, you know, everything before the word but, I understand this, but, and then everything just got negated. So all of the affirmation you tried to give someone you just canceled it. Say,
right.
Like, and both can coexist. Like, you have hurt me in ways no other person ever has, and I still love you and want to make this work. I mean, they can both coexist. And you really got to manage your anger. Like, I'm going to be blunt here. Like, I have the Scotch-Irish, irascible, quick to anger, I will blood feud you 2 generations gene in me. Like, it is not helpful. So you have to be able to recognize that. And, you know, the biggest things you can do also is make sure the other person feels heard. So
yeah, this is crucial.
One role to do that is, like, I mean, literally, I'm just looking at my desk here, like, you know, the talking stapler. If you have the stapler, you get to talk. Otherwise, you don't. And I will listen until, and this is key, until I can repeat back what you said to your satisfaction until you feel heard. And I'm not going to, I can ask clarifying questions. I can say, what did you mean by that? Are there other examples? Tell me more about that. Don't ask why. Why is justifying. Like, why do you feel that? Say, tell me what it feels, you know, how it feels when you think that. When you do that and the person actually feels heard, you just take things way down.
Yeah.
I will let you talk as long as I get the same courtesy. You will then listen to me and you'll repeat back to my satisfaction that I feel heard. Not that you can say the words, but you know the affect it had.
Yeah, you understand.
If you see flooding, you know what I mean, where someone's just like totally overwhelmed with the cascades there. You need to interrupt that when it happens before, because that's when angry things get said that are relationship ending.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a 10-minute break or 24 hours. We were not dropping this. I would like to continue this. And then, of course, repair when you have to.
I need to be better at that part. I'm not horrible at it, but I need to be better.
Yeah, so it's seeing it in real time. You know, like when games slow down when you're a professional athlete, like you got to see it slow down, and that's hard to do in the moment. It really is hard to do. So I mean, that's a lot about relationships. But
I think for me, the thing is that when I feel that there's like an authentic impasse, I believe it's best not to talk, because forcing conversation leads to things, I think, being said that shouldn't be said, or like for a lack of being able to describe a thing. You say something that's whack, you know, something that you shouldn't say, not that it's necessarily rude, but that it's like poorly crafted, right? Yeah. And so I think sometimes well,
I could do something different, which is if I'm in that situation and I'm not flooded, it could be, I would like to spend the next 20, 30 minutes, however long it takes, hearing you out until you feel I've understood you. I would like time to reflect on how I feel based on what you said. Do you have an objection to that?
Right.
If I take time to give you a response that your emotions deserve. So you can buy time and make someone feel heard.
You just like, I feel like just hearing that, I feel like I matured about 20 years. I'm just like, damn.
So
like,
now we're 23. Get better,
bro. Oh my God! So much.
But you know, if it's okay, let me transition to how. So what does it have to do with the FBI negotiation tool?
Yeah.
And so the other book for show and tell, and I think I've shown this before, is "Never Split the Difference," is by Chris Voss, the former head of the FBI hostage negotiation team. And just a quick story about this. So when I was a partner at those law firms, we would have people come in to teach us the FBI negotiation style. And we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to have these guys, not Chris. Other people come in, who've gone through it and teach us. And it was like our secret weapon, man. Like when we were up against like other law firms or lawyers.
You could really bring the heat.
Didn't have this. I'm like, I'm going to take your lunch money and I'm going to get everything I want. And, you know, by the time this is done, I'm going to fleece you for everything. Like, it was so easy because, you know, it's a traditional negotiation style, you know, for say hostages was a very brute force. Like, we're going to send people in, people get killed. It was, you know, machismo and hostages died.
Right, of course.
And in business, the traditional mechanism was the Harvard School, the rational negotiation. It is, what is the best negotiated alternative outcome? And it's just ridiculous because we're humans and our fear circuitry is firing and going crazy. And I'll tell you about that in a few weeks because we'll get to that in trauma. But we're not rational people. And so if you don't understand that there is a real human on the other side, you're going to make mistakes. By the way, do you know why the book's called what it is? Never Split the Difference. Do you know that story? Yeah. So, the way we think about business normally is like you're in a Middle Eastern street market. I want 100 for the carpet or rug. I want 50. Well, let's split the difference. And call it 75. Now let's try that again. I have 2 hostages inside the bank or that I'm holding, as diplomats that I want to kill. Well, you know what? Just kill one of them and send the other one out. We'll just split the difference. Call it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so
I've never split.
Yeah, there are times you can't negotiate like that. Like you have to win. You have to
win
what each side wants and what you need. And so, before I tell you what Chris actually says, I just want to give you a quick story about it. So I'm not going to name names, but I was teaching at a major world business school because they let me do that sometimes. Don't always get invited back, and you'll see why here in about 2 minutes. So I was teaching the traditional negotiation school, the Harvard School, and I was teaching Chris Voss. And I basically said, this is the greatest negotiation book ever written, and it is the most important book you will ever read if you're in business. Seriously. And it also applies to child bedtimes. So apparently the negotiation professor who just taught there for 30 years, who's one of the Harvard people, was like, you're not to talk about this. This is insulting. I can't believe you mentioned this.
You were.
And he was like going off on me, like, this is a terrible book and what's wrong with you? And so like you're in this situation now, right? And so let me tell you what I said academically, and I'll tell you how I handled him. So, let me tell you a story. So go back to a law firm partner. So there's this weird statistic I started tracking because it kept happening. Like I didn't set out one day to say this. Right, and here's what it was. When I completed a deal worth over $10 million, how many times did the other side CEO call me to hire me? Not my client, but the other side. And the answer is like 40%. 40%. Right. Well, it's like 42. It's like, but.
Okay. That's good.
And I'm like, that's weird. Why does this keep happening? And it was always like the same thing. And it sounds like a relationship, right? They're like, my lawyer just wanted to argue with me and they fight about commas. They didn't listen to me. You listen to me. It's like, my boyfriend never listens. You listen, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound familiar.
Right.
My lawyer doesn't listen to me. You're the only one that said, what do I want? What are my goals? What scares me about my business? What are you afraid of in the deal? You're the only one that put on the table what I feared.
Yeah.
And made me feel hurt. Like, I want you as my lawyer. You're the only one. Like, you see me, David, you see me. I'm like my current lawyer doesn't. He doesn't send me roses anymore. And,
that's right.
And I joke about it for a little comedic value, but it's real because if you understand what Voss does, which I'll get to in just a second, it's the same as the Gottmans. By the way, just to finish the story with the professor is I did a bunch of things with him after to say, well, you probably feel like I've shown you a lack of respect to walk into your business school and teach something contrary to what you teach. That's called an accusation audit. I'm the jerk, right? You're just fusing it.
Right.
I'd like to hear everything about, why you think that Chris Voss is not good. I want to hear it and I will repeat it back to you. So giving him a chance to flood, get it off his system, repeat it back. Tell me things I can do to repair this. Is it an apology? Would you like me to say something to the students? And I had this guy within like 10 minutes eating out of my hand. Like he was like, man, this is great. And I was like, dude, I just did Voss on you. Like I did everything you said doesn't work. You are a walking hypocrite machine. So let's go back to it. So I just gave you, so let's talk about the Voss toolkit. So I'm not saying which business school because I am invited back.
Thank you for not.
Well, I don't mind embarrassing people, but I actually, yeah, I like the students there. So tactical empathy. So like in Gottman, there's real empathy. Like I want this person to be my life love. I feel their pain. Here it's tactical. I don't really empathize with the terrorists, but I want to know what motivates them, what their fears are. Are they scared teenagers with bombs strapped to their chest? Are they going to? I mean, you want to know these things, right? Mirroring, which is repeating the last 1 to 3 words. It keeps someone talking. So, significant upside. And you don't have to say anymore, just like that, and just rising to let them. People hate silence, so they'll refill it. They'll keep.
That's actually really deep, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It makes sense.
Labeling, and this is kind of like you're trying to paraphrase, but you're putting it back in their court, which is, it seems like you're worried this deal's too good to be true. It seems like you think I'm getting something I shouldn't. It seems like you're worried that we're going to terminate early. Like you're putting things out there. And, related to this is something called the accusation audit. And I've been doing this for years. Like, you probably think I'm a real jerk. Jerk isn't the word I use. And it gets people, they laugh and say, yeah, I did. And now suddenly you can actually have a real conversation.
Right.
Your worst fears are out in the open. Like the thing you're trying to
now we can just go ahead.
You can just talk. There's calibrated questions that Chris Voss, like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, get them to start solving your problem for you. Like, I'd like to make this work, but how can I do that? Like, if I know you both want us to be successful, how can I do that and still remain in business?
Right.
And the other thing Voss does, which is a little different than the Gottmans, so this is a uniqueness, is the power of no. Like, notice there's a few times I've given questions as examples today and throughout the weeks, and I don't say, can I meet you tomorrow for lunch? I say, would you object if we scheduled lunch tomorrow? Do you have an objection to noon? Because I'm giving you the power to say no. Like, when people are asking us for yeses, we want to shut down because they're getting something from us. So I don't know if I want to do that. But if I say, do you have an objection? Like, well, I guess I don't have an objection. The power is in my hands. Same question.
Right.
And so if you go back to what the Gottmans are doing, making someone feel heard, and I didn't do the justice because we're on a short time frame, but many of the things they teach, mirroring, labeling, repetition, paraphrasing, if you put them, like, and when I do this for a presentation, I put them side by side and say every single thing matches up, except for the no thing. That's unique to Chris and the Gottmans. But you are doing the same thing because both of these are listening, validating, repairing, turning around. Like, Chris Voss talks about, when someone doesn't feel hurt, you got to apologize quickly. You have to atone. The nervous system is the nervous system, whether it's a relationship, a business, or a high stress situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's the same tools in business. It's the same tools in relationships, the same tools in crisis. It's the same thing because we're still, our limbic system rules us because we're mammals and our brains were not wired for rational behavior.
Dude, I love this, man. I love this. So in conclusion, Money Mondays is rocking, my friend. You need to stay in tune. You need to make sure you're here next week. Before I forget, well, give us some final thoughts before we close out.
Let me just give you a few things here. So, I just wanted to close one loop I planned.
No. It's important.
This is also leadership. I kind of told you that organizations where the leader listens outperform.
Yeah.
So when I am a VC, like I've said this before, I'll say it again. Like, as a VC investor, we have a 40% unicorn hit rate. What that means is if I invest in you at a Series A, like the first check, 2 out of 5 times you're going to be worth over $1 billion within 10 years. The company, not you.
Right.
That's pretty incredible, actually.
That's.
And so, what do we look for, and what do the other people with similar records look for? And our leaders, we look for empathy, self-awareness, transparency and trust, flexibility, inclusiveness, curiosity. By the way, next week is about how to learn.
Right.
So that's a segue. Come back. So I'm going to teach you how you become a lifelong learner and be curious. Like, we look for those things. We don't look for toxic, leadership that destroys people.
Yeah, that's whack.
And I just want to leave maybe people with 2 pieces of homework, and you can do one or either.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Like this first piece of homework, I did this program once. I think I told you I did a program at a chess tournament, because that's how we met, actually, was through chess, because of hip hop chess. And, basically the parents have nothing to do except cause mischief and argue during the day when the kids are playing. So it's like, hey, they said, if can come in and teach some of your programs, just to keep the parents like tactically occupied.
Yeah.
And literally a 60-year-old Chinese man came up to me like months after and said, this next exercise saved my marriage.
Wow.
And so, a true story. So this is what it is. For 1 week, I want you to actually listen to people, actively listen, not solve their problems, not attack, not react, not critique it, not offer solutions, because that's me. We're guys, we do that. We want to solve things. Just listen and don't argue or defend yourself. And your goal is that you will focus on repeating back to the speaker until they say you fully understood them.
Okay.
Don't worry about what you're going to say. In fact, it's actually advantageous to speak last in a group because you have the most information.
Right.
And it gives you more status. So, and don't offer solutions unless you're asked. Like, this is a problem that I always do is I say, do you want a solution or you want to be heard? But for a week, your question is, do you feel I heard you? Just try that. Just try that. And keep listening and use these tools. Do you mean that? You can ask clarifying questions, silence and paraphrasing. It sounds like you feel this, and don't get defensive. Just try that. Another exercise you can do, and maybe you do one this week and one the next week, is in every conversation you have, notice when someone is asking for connection. You know, and I don't mean connection like, you know, it's even in business, like there's something that's offered where you can turn away from it, turn toward it, or turn against it.
I got
Would you like to do this deal? Would you like to go to this place? Do you look at this thing together with me? Experience this experience with me. And you will be stunned how many, Gottman uses the term bids. I don't like bid because it's like an ask to me, so I don't like that. But how many requests you miss every single day where people are trying to connect with you
and you're not
responding to it. And so the first exercise is just practice in how to start listening. And I'll tell you another story from someone who went through that is like, this guy hated being in dinner parties, but his wife was like, you know, a major doctor and they always had to go to the department, you know, to visit the hospital. And he's like, I just hate this thing. And so, you know, he went through a program I did and he learned how to listen to people and he did this exercise all the time. And literally he just said almost nothing, but suddenly everyone was like to his wife, your husband is the greatest listener. He knows so much stuff. He's amazing. And all he did was actually say, is this what you mean? Do you feel hurt? Like that's all he did was just learn to actively listen. And suddenly he went from, you know, being someone who was nobody to being like the star of the show. And people started confiding everything. Like people will spill their guts to you when you do this. And in the counting requests, the reason for that exercise is how many times are people trying to connect with you and share something with you, whether it's your partner, someone in business, people you meet, and you just miss it because silent rage and resentment builds up when you consistently miss when people are trying to connect. And it matters because, you know, your capacity to deeply connect with people, again, just to wrap this up, how good of a leader you are, the quality of the life partner you will have and how that relationship lasts or doesn't. How you deal with crisis situations, which you will be in sometimes, not like hostages where someone's about to
but just life.
You know, you're gonna, stuff will happen where there's high stakes and high stress and people's emotions are way up. And people are in fear mode, and also how you conduct yourself in business. And what, because you don't get, I'll leave you with this quote. Chris Voss says, you don't get the life you deserve. You get the life you negotiate.
Man, I hate to agree with it, damn it. I've negotiated poorly. But this was a dope episode. Looking forward to next week. I'll see you guys next week. Well, soon. I got some cool stuff I'm throwing up. Did you see the Gangstar thing that I just posted? It's behind the paywall, but it's incredible. 1991 interview with Guru from Gangstar on the steps of KPO radio in a storm. Really cool stuff there. And then don't forget to please sign up for the Nogi Wrestling and Jiu-Jitsu Clinic May 17th and 18th at the Afro Bushido Academy in sunny Redwood City. That's a 2-day affair, and the discount code is GRAPPLE with a lowercase g. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be me and Carlos Levexier, who's one of the greatest wrestling coaches of the region. The Giants gave him a jersey because he's that good of a wrestler. So come through, hang out. We'll do more. And don't forget, the Resilient Men's Group is still a thing. It's incredible. Today we had the deepest conversation, and you know, it's an international group. So, you know, sign up, get involved, DM me and on IG, and I can get you involved. Thanks again, David. We'll see you next week.
See you soon.